Corvo, if only there was someone else I trusted to send, so that you could remain near. But there is no one else, and the Spy Master was right to insist that I send you. The plague has taken so many, and we must find a cure. When you are near, my heart is at peace. Emily and I will count the days until you return. Hurry home, and bring good news.
Hi guys, Ben here for the ScreenHogUK review for Dishonored, the new first-person stealth action game developed by Arcane Studios and published by Bethesda. In a time where sequels and interchangeable franchises tend to dominate the marketplace, it's very refreshing to see a new IP like Dishonored come along and do things differently, especially when it all comes together as well as it does here. In Dishonored, you take up the role of Corvo Attano, bodyguard to the Empress of Dunwall, a city inspired by Victorian London, spliced together with steampunk style that I've come to refer to as whale punk, with oil from the sea creatures powering the Industrial Revolution in this world. Upon the game's opening, Corvo is returning to Dunwall after being sent on a mission to request aid from neighbouring states in combating a plague that has struck the city following the arrival of hordes of rats. However, your arrival is earlier than expected, which puts you right in the middle of an assassination attempt on the Empress's life. Ultimately, you fail to thwart the murderers, who also kidnap Emily, the young heir to the throne, and leave you at the scene to be framed for the whole thing. Cue the escape from captivity and going on a revenge mission to clear your name, rescue Emily, and depose those who set you up. All in all, to be honest, the story here is nothing you won't have seen before, with the bulk of the plot largely being made of cliches and the twists feeling slightly signposted hours before they even occur. I was never really surprised by what happened, but it does keep the game moving, and it's not terrible, I must admit. However, Dishonored does a really good job of managing to dress all this up with some very, very solid voice acting and a unique and highly developed world that comes to life with a truly beautiful art style. The voice talent here is undertaken by a mix of professional voice acting veterans and Hollywood talent, which includes the likes of Susan Sarandon, Lena Headey, Brad Dourif, John Slattery and Chloe Moretz. Possibly the biggest compliment here is that I didn't actually pick up on any of these other than Brad Dourif, because he's got a fairly distinct voice. I didn't pick up any of these until I looked at the credits, simply because they are all here to portray really well-rounded, really well-realised characters, and they basically come together to create a great diverse cast of characters, and they're simply not here to put their names on the box and sell extra games. I mean, it should demonstrate that the fact that I didn't even know they were in until after I'd finished the game and looked it up. As I just mentioned, Dunwall itself is actually an incredibly interesting and fleshed out city that uses the Victorian vibe to great effect, something that which most other games have avoided, to be honest. You rarely ever see the Victorian aesthetic come into games. On top of this, the whale-focused spin on the steampunk aesthetic helps freshen up this often overplayed style into something that is as bizarre as it is striking, further helping to forge this truly unique feel to Dishonored. Overall, the art style in this game attempts to portray that of a living oil painting, with textures looking like they almost were painted by brush strokes. This lends itself to really hammering home the Victorian feel of the game and produces some amazing backdrops that look like they should belong in an oil painting hanging on a wall, not just in a game. I wouldn't necessarily say that the graphics are groundbreaking on a technical level, but the art style here elevates the overall look to something that is worth talking about. However, as much as I enjoyed the cast of characters and the setting, some aspects are oddly underdeveloped here. Early on, the game tells you that the way you play the game will affect the story and ultimate outcome, with it going so far as to say that the more times you are spotted and the more people you kill, the more guards, rat swarms and zombie-like plague victims called Weepers will show up in later levels. However, it remains very vague about how it will affect the story and how it will affect your relationship with characters. I was left wondering, if I play stealthy, do I save the city but maybe die in the process? Or what if I just kill everybody? Do I isolate myself from my allies because I'm just a murdering monster? It never tells you anything about what might happen. And even after finishing the game, I can only really recall one conversation where my actions were commented on, and it was kind of throwaway. I don't think I went too far either way for it to have a big impact, so it was kind of just there. I would also like to mention that the endings are changed by how you play, but they're not all that substantial. They're very reminiscent of something you would find possibly in one of the Fallout games than something you would find in a fully fleshed out RPG, you know, a BioWare RPG or something like that. Another part of the story that is not well developed at all, or really explained. Links heavily into occult magic and a being called the Other, who is almost a Satan-like character who grants you magical powers early on in the game. His motives and purpose are never really explained, leaving many questions even after the game closes. There's also quite a lot of background about whales possessing magical power in addition to providing the oil that powers this world's industry, with runes and charms made from their bones playing into the game. All these aspects are up in the air and, as a result, slightly frustrating, but nonetheless it does add another layer of intrigue to the deep and dark world of Dunwall. Dishonored is ultimately a first-person game that can be played as a straight action or stealth game, or of course you can mix the two up and play it as a bit of both. I personally did. I think it's the most fun that way. It plays a bit like Skyrim, in which you control both hands and you can equip different abilities in each hand. Your main hand will always wield your trusty sword, which can be used as a fencing sabre or a slice and dicey knife. Sneaking up on an enemy will allow for you to land a fatal blow on them, instantly killing them, or you can elect just to choke them out, which helps keep your playthrough nice and peaceful. Choking them out is slower, and you do run the risk of, if the body is found, the guard being woken up and having to deal with them again. However, if you're caught in open combat with a sword, you can hack and slash to your heart's content, and you also have the ability to parry strikes, and if timed correctly you can open up opponents to deadly counters, which instantly kill them in fairly gruesome ways. However, if finesse is not really your thing, you can just attempt to run in and hack and slash to your heart's content. However, as the game progresses you do come across slightly tougher enemies, and some of these are fairly accomplished swordsmen of themselves, and this brute force tactic doesn't always work. So you do need to pick up a bit of skill as you're going on. You can't just brute force all your way through the game willy-nilly. If you go on the offensive, you do need to have a bit of skill. Your offhand can be used to carry ranged weapons such as your pistol or crossbow, which actually comes with 3 variants of arrows: the sleep dart for non-lethal takedowns, the traditional dart for normal kills, and my personal favourite, the incendiary dart, which sets your opponent ablaze and leaves a crispy corpse in your wake. You can also equip grenades, which are fairly self-explanatory. You can also equip things like the razor trap, which essentially is a landmine that sprays out a shower of sharp metal shards as people come near, and it can cause some major chaos. It can just decimate bodies and strip limbs off. It's pretty lethal. If tools of the trade aren't necessarily your thing, once you've unlocked magical powers that are given to you by the Other, you can equip them in your offhand. These powers include Blink, which is a short-range teleport, allows you to navigate through areas very quickly, allows you to get access to the more vertical aspects of levels. A lot of verticality in the level design here, and Blink is probably going to be your main tool for getting around. It's an amazing ability. Allows you to dart at the guards and slice and dice them before they know what's happening, allows you to get around them. Just basically is an incredibly useful utility skill. On top of this, you also have things like dark vision, which is it's kind of like a night vision type thing. It allows you to see enemies through walls, lets you see where they're currently looking. Very helpful for getting into buildings and infiltrating buildings without being seen if you're going the stealth route. You can also do things like summon a swarm of rats that tend to attack enemies and devour them on the spot, leaving no trace of a corpse. You can possess animals, and if you upgrade the possession ability, you can then possess people. My personal favourite use of this is possessing rats to use the air vents in buildings, getting to places you otherwise shouldn't be able to get. You also have access to abilities such as Slow Time, which does exactly what it says on the tin. It allows you to halt the flow of time, allowing you to move at full speed through these rooms, decimate a room full of enemies before they can even react, and then just restore time and carry on your merry way. It's an incredibly fun ability, incredibly useful. Can even be used in stealth to delay enemies while you're navigating around without getting spotted. It's an incredibly useful ability. On top of this, you also have the likes of a force push of sorts, which essentially knocks enemies back, can blow doors off their hinges. It's a very offensive weapon. I never really used it that much, to be honest. I was far busy experimenting with rats and possession and time slow. Never really invested too much time into this. Your equipment and abilities can actually be upgraded, with the equipment being upgraded through the use of money and blueprints, which can be provided for Brad Dourif's character, and he will upgrade your physical equipment. Your powers, however, on the other hand, can be upgraded by spending runes, which are made from whalebone, which I think I touched on earlier. Essentially these runes are scattered throughout the levels, and there's a finite supply, so you have to pick and choose which powers you get. You won't be able to get every power, even if you do choose to go and seek out every whalebone rune in the game. You simply will not be able to get all powers. You have to pick and choose which abilities you want. You could probably get all the powers, but you will not be able to upgrade them. Or you can have a few abilities and upgrade them to max strength to make you more effective. It's entirely up to you, but you do have to go and seek these out, and they are scattered throughout every level, and it's up to you to go and find them. The upgrades for equipment are the kind of traditional ones. Weapons get more damage, faster reload, more ammo capacity. The powers are a bit more interesting. You have powers. Basically, if you upgrade Blink, it goes twice as far, allowing you far greater maneuverability. One of the abilities you can unlock allows you to turn enemies you kill using stealth will turn to ash. Now, if you upgrade this, any enemy you kill will then turn to ash, basically allowing you to clean house if things go wrong, and leaving very, very little evidence that you were ever there. It's a really useful ability if you do like to play stealth but aren't particularly good at it and end up in the shit like I tend to. While we're on the subject of collectibles, in addition to the whalebone runes, you also have whalebone charms, which are slightly like lesser versions, and instead of acting like currency, each one in the game is unique and provides a small buff, such as slightly faster running when stealthed, or perhaps slightly faster choking enemies out just to increase your effectiveness. You can equip between 4 and 6 of these, I believe. You need to upgrade to carry the maximum amount. But basically, you can mix and match to provide the bonuses that you want. And like the whale runes, there's a finite amount in the game, and each one of them is unique. It's up to you to search them out and equip the ones you want to shape your character how you like. It's also worth noting that unlike the powers, once you pick the powers and the upgrades for the powers, you're stuck with them. These runes are constantly interchangeable. You can swap them out as you need to, as you see fit, so you're never stuck with them. They're a very minor buff, but they're just add a little bit of depth to proceedings here. Now, I've mentioned that these are scattered throughout the levels. Now, the levels are fairly expansive and fairly non-linear, so it's quite hard to actually find these all. So you are actually given a very odd tool in the shape of a human heart with kind of cogs and machinery embedded into it, which when equipped will mark their location on your map. Another interesting feature of this heart is actually that if you press the left trigger, it will make mysterious and cryptic comments about the current situation, the current story, or perhaps items and people you're currently looking at. It's very unusual, but it's a nice little touch that adds a bit more depth to the slightly underdeveloped supernatural elements to this game. The stealth mechanics here are incredibly solid, and when you play them well, you feel like a ghost that's just sliding through this level with no trouble whatsoever. The expansive level design really adds to the strength of the stealth mechanics, while also rewarding the more explorative players with hidden pathways, caches of goodies, sometimes just even adding depth to the world around you with conversations being overheard, and even books being found to read, just so you can get a bit more background on what's going on. The design here feels very much like what we've seen in Hitman games in the past, and you basically have a lot of freedom here because of the likes of Blink. There's a lot of verticality in this game. You can go across rooftops. Most games have you looking across the floor and that's it. This game has you looking in all directions, all dimensions. It forces you to be incredibly creative with your methods of getting around the level and using the powers to do so. However, stealth's not really your thing, and I know a lot of people tend not to like stealth because I think they find it quite intimidating. You can play this as a straight shooter, taking enemies head on, using your powers and weapons to overpower the forces who block your way. Despite their overwhelming numbers, you will get mobbed in this game, and you really have to do clever things with the powers, and you have to have a bit of skill. The stealth requires a lot of planning and a lot of precision, whereas the action requires a lot of quick thinking and a lot of skill on the combat. Despite the fact that you're actually quite fragile, you can be just a devastating force of carnage. Combining the time slow to halt a group of encroaching guards only to blink behind them, slice one's throat before they know where you are, pull out your crossbow with incendiary arrows and then set the second ablaze, just in time for you to parry the third's desperate swing of his sword, leaving it open for a deadly where you skewer your sabre into his neck and then twist off his head. It's a truly amazing and very visceral experience, and when you pull these type of feats off, it makes you feel like an unstoppable monster. The combat options only grow as you unlock new upgrades for your weapons and powers, as these make you far more deadly. And while the enemies do grow more dangerous and numerous, you can always tend to overpower them. As I say, quick thinking and a bit of clever use of the powers, and this game can be a really, really rewarding action game. Playing in an all-out offensive manner will generate more chaos. Chaos is how Dishonored rates how you're doing, or how you're playing the game essentially. And the more you murder and the more you are spotted, the higher your chaos. And I touched on this earlier, but this increases the amount of rat hordes and weepers present in the city as the plague spreads due to the anarchy you create. Meaning, essentially, more dangers for you to deal with as the game goes on. At the same time, stealthy characters who are using non-lethal approaches have far fewer options to deal with things, because a lot of the powers that are on offer here are very, very much geared towards being a killing machine. This ultimately means that neither option are without its flaws, and the punishing aspects of either really strikes me as slightly odd, because this is a game that tries to promote freedom and choice throughout every aspect of its design. Another point to touch on is that the game will continually remind you that your actions will affect the story, but it's so vague that it's hard to tell how it will actually do this without multiple different playthroughs. It doesn't even really explain how chaos is rated and how you go about getting low chaos. Yes, it's linked to how many people you kill and how many times you are spotted, but there's never really any definitive measurement mentioned in the game. However, it is kind of established now through people seeing on the internet that it's probably you're allowed to kill about 20% of people in the level and not be seen very much at all to get a low chaos. It's quite difficult. You're going the stealth route, you should be able to pull it off no problem. However, it's due to this ambiguous nature of the choices between going all out action and murdering and taking it slow and steady and being peaceful. I would honestly suggest you play this game how you want to play it in the moment. Do not, you see, if you approach the scene, you want to just go in as a stealthy character and you feel frustrated by it, go guns blazing for a bit. You'll feel a lot better, you'll enjoy the game, and to be honest, there's not enough here to really warrant you forcing yourself to play the game in a way you're not enjoying. Honestly, play it as you will. Don't go in all stealthy if you're not enjoying it. And I would honestly say if you dismiss stealth right off the bat, like a lot of people do still, I'd honestly say give the stealth a chance. But don't try to play the game just to get a different ending. The endings aren't substantial enough, and the difference in the story isn't really that noticeable. As I've mentioned before, I only saw one conversation where it really affected me. One thing to say about Dishonored is it's a game of odd length, because if you play it as a straight shooter and a straight action game and you are particularly good at it or particularly skilled, you can make this a really short game. Enemies are, I've mentioned that you're quite fragile. Well, enemies are just as fragile as you. People act like people here. If you stab them, they die. If you shoot them, they die. And your targets, essentially, when you're sent to kill somebody as a target, you can kill them very, very quickly and very, very easily. It's not that hard, and I can imagine you could blaze through this game in about 5 hours if you really went heavy on the action side. It took me a lot longer than that because I did a mix of stealth and action, and at the same time I can imagine it would take you a very long time if you were just playing a pure stealth. So it's a game of very, very strange length. It's really as long as you want to make it. So it's hard to comment on whether it's really value for money in terms of hours. I would say that it's great value for money just because of the sheer variety here. You can play through this game 2-3 times without ever doing the same thing. There's so much tactics, so many routes, so many abilities available to you that you can just play this game again and again and it will not be the same experience. Overall, I would say that Dishonored is a superb new intellectual property that tries a lot of new stuff, which for the most part works. Oddly enough, it's the things that it plays safe which are the weakest points here, but these are not enough to detract for it as a highly recommended game for anyone who enjoys action or stealth, or is even just looking for something that is refreshing in a video game. I would give this game a solid B+.